2017 is going to be a great year for multiplayer gaming. I'm Falcon, and today on GameRanks, the top 15 new multiplayer games of 2017. Number 15 is Divinity Original Sin, which is a phenomenal single-player game, but on top of that, it is such a good tactical multiplayer RPG. Basically, if you can imagine tactical strategy RPGs as a MOBA, that's the game's multiplayer mode, and it is so freaking cool. Like, it works incredibly well. On top of that, you have the Divinity Original Sin aesthetic, which, let's just be honest, is one of the better aesthetics in a game right now. You'd think it'd be really impossible with the way that the game is set up, but somehow it actually manages to put itself together in one of the better, more cohesive multiplayer experiences, especially in turn-based RPGing. Number 14 is Friday the 13th the game. Now, what is an imperfect game actually really succeeds in some pretty big ways. First, it's an asymmetric game, which means like evolve, so it has a hurdle in perception to get over. And the launch of the game didn't exactly do a great job getting over that hurdle. There were numerous bugs and server issues, but that has been addressed and it has left us with a pretty interesting game. There's a lot of interesting details in the game all the way down to its music cues, which depending on how fast Jason is running actually change. This big hide-and-seek game actually works really well, if not a little inconsistently, but that's kind of to be expected with an asymmetric multiplayer game. And if this is the next evolution of Evolve, then, well, this is a genre that might actually have some legs. Number 13 is For Honor, a sort of faction-based, hand-to-hand combat multiplayer game, which I have to say, if you've ever played, is one of the more interesting experiences. Now, not everybody loves this game. However, part of the reason was the matchmaking, which just got a massive fix yesterday. I tried it out again after not playing it for a little while, and frankly, it works just much better. It's much more functional, in case that's something that's kept you off of it. It's kind of a game that is specific, so there's going to be some people that don't like it, but if you think that a melee game where you essentially build your own character class within the conforms of hand-to-hand combat sounds appealing to you, it's pretty much that, and it wins at it. It's a very good game. Number 12 is Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, which obviously continues the tradition of perhaps one of the most chaotic fighting games there is, but if you've ever played a Marvel vs. Capcom title, you know that they're also frickin' primo fighting game material. They've got what you want if you want fast-paced, chaotic fighting game action. It delivers on that, and has delivered on that for years and years. Now, this version of the game may make several massive jumps, and it may not. We don't know exactly. But it's a series that has never disappointed me in the past. I can't imagine this being a bad game. I mean, unless they slice it up and do the stupid modern fighting game thing where there's no content unless you buy stuff. But we don't know. Hopefully they don't. Maybe they learned their lesson from Street Fighter and the type of reception that got. Maybe. Hopefully. Number 11 is Lawbreakers, which is Cliff Bleszinski's entry into the hero shooter genre. It does have a little bit of a grittier look than Overwatch, but it also retains a lot of what makes hero shooters interesting. Also, despite being a little bit grittier, it still has a nice, very colorful palette. There's a certain verticality that they want to emphasize with the game, having levels that definitely go up and down a lot more than your typical shooter's levels. But I will say this game does face a lot of stiff competition. This is a pretty crowded genre, and it has to be really good to stand out. But if there's anybody who can do it, it's probably Cliffy B. Number 10 is Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands, a tactical open-world first-person shooter with some damn good co-op. If this is a game you like in single player, this is a game you will love in multiplayer. You and 3 other players explore this massive game world, and you basically get to experience the campaign together. It's a great game, as is, but even better if you do it with friends. It's been criticized for not having a massive jump over previous Tom Clancy games, but I think it's probably the best recent Tom Clancy game. It doesn't introduce a heck of a lot of new features, but it's just a lot of quality. And I think that that's, while not revolutionary, certainly worth your time. Number 9 is Halo Wars 2, which in my opinion is a significant improvement over the first Halo Wars. For one, the game was developed by Creative Assembly, who, as you may or may not know, did the Total War series, and all of that experience shows through in Halo Wars 2. In my opinion, it is a much more cohesive RTS than the first outing, and there's so many different multiplayer modes that you will never get bored of it. There's co-op, deathmatch, stronghold, domination, blitz. There's just so many different ways to play. Blitz is actually probably my favorite because it brings in the collectible card game element instead of the base building element, and believe it or not, I actually enjoy that more. I mean, for 2017, I sincerely doubt you're going to do a lot better than this game. There are some minor issues like the AI, for instance. The pathfinding is a little weird at times, but it's really the multiplayer where the game shines, as if it was specifically designed for that, in my opinion. And come on, it's Halo. Halo is a huge part of gaming tradition at this point. Number 8 is Absolver, a highly stylized RPG/fighting game. It's interesting because its fighting system is very much like a 3D fighting game. You can see a little bit of that Witcher-style tactical dodging, but the fighting itself revolves around martial arts move sets. The game intends to sort of merge various multiplayer modes, such as free roaming, cooperative, and competitive play, all into one thing, intending to feel like a massively multiplayer online game. The game also has a really unique style. Some describe it as hyper-realism, but the people in the game don't really look hyper-realistic, but the world itself does trend towards a so real it's not real look. It's very pretty, and I think this is going to be a really interesting game. Number 7 is Star Wars Battlefront 2, which, as you know, I'm a huge fan of the original Battlefront. However, I had a lot of criticism for the amount of content. I also legitimately just hated that there wasn't a single-player campaign, but that's being remedied, so let's talk about the multiplayer. From the looks of it, they've really layered out the multiplayer in a good way. There's actually quite a few balancing issues that have clearly been addressed. You can notice it legitimately just from watching the footage. The heroes are not so overpowered that they can't be defeated, but they are definitely a marked advancement over the regular units. They now have also phase-based multiplayer levels in which there are 3 different areas of the map for you to be fighting in. We've seen that as Theed Palace, and frankly, I really like that type of idea. I think it all sort of comes together to create something that is much, much more than the first game, which is exactly what we needed. Also, all updates will be free, and everybody will have access to everything, which is, as far as I'm concerned, the biggest improvement. Number 6 is Gwent, the card game from The Witcher, which is such a damn fun game, it makes sense that they wanted to do this. Legitimately, it's very, very easy to get sucked into Gwent, which is exactly why it's a good thing they're making this game. Now, they've expanded upon Gwent, given a lot more cards, a lot more rules, and frankly, I'm excited to get lost in this game. Again, frankly, I've gotten lost in it in the Witcher game, and there was actually quite a while where I ended up really distracting myself from what I was trying to do in the game, just because Gwent's so damn fun. Now I get to do that with real life. Number 5 is Nintendo ARMS, which on the surface looks like an extremely basic game that might involve a lot of motion control gimmicks, but what it actually turned out to be was a fantastic fighting game. So I'll say this, 3D fighting games are often things that are difficult to make specifically. Absolver looks great because it is more than just a fighting game. Nintendo ARMS manages to be nothing but a 3D fighting game that works so incredibly well and manages to be incredibly refreshing in the way only a Nintendo product can be. The footage totally explains what's going on. You've got spring arms, you punch with them, it's kind of like ultra boxing. There's other moves and throws and whatnot, but really the best way to understand how good this game is simply to experience it. It is unique and it's beyond enjoyable. Number 4 is Crackdown 3, which is exactly what I've wanted forever. I'll just run through my little stump speech for this game again. I love Red Faction, I love destructible environments. I've always wanted a game that placed you in a more densely populated area with those same capabilities. Crackdown 3 is that game. And it has been a long time coming. The technology behind this game has been extensive in its development, and I want to make sure that when you go into this, you get exactly what it says it is. That's why there's cloud processing to handle all the extra physics that might not be normally used in a game like this, but they want you to be able to bring down buildings, and not some of the buildings, not some of the structures, not some of the destruction that you expect out of Crackdown 3. All of it. And that's why I'm happy that they've waited this long to release it, because I feel like the only reason they would have is to ensure that it is exactly what it looks like it is, and I can't wait. wait. Number 3 is Quake Champions, which is a long-awaited return to the Quake franchise. They're doing it in the style of a hero-based, class-based shooter, which ultimately leads us to have to bring up Overwatch. The idea of an Overquake or a Quake for Watch is basically, in my opinion, a very good idea because Quake handles a very specific way, in a way that Overwatch frankly doesn't. Overwatch is a very different game from Quake, obviously, but incorporating those class elements into Quake, I think is going to result in a very interesting and fun experience that I have a feeling will please old Quake fans as well as bring a lot of new fans to the series. I don't know if they're gearing up for a single-player Quake, and this is kind of the way to reintroduce people to it as well as create a multiplayer gaming platform that they can charge microtransactions on. I have no idea, but I look forward to enjoying Quake Champions. Number 2 is Call of Duty World War II, which will most likely bring you all of the weird stuff that Call of Duty multiplayer brings, from zombies to totally out there modes. Frankly, the most creative part of a Call of Duty game is typically the multiplayer, and I know that they're not going to do this, but you know what I would love? If they did a multiplayer mode where all the Infinite Warfare stuff was in a World War II setting. That's on my wish list, personally. I think that would just be hilarious, as well as interesting because you'd have the option to do it, which I think is basically the main complaint about that stuff. And also, it'd be a really fun troll, if you ask me. But obviously, this is the Call of Duty game that people have been requesting for several years now, so expect them to really pull out no stops on the multiplayer. This one basically has to be the best one that they've done in a very long time. Otherwise, they are probably going to lose some people, so I fully expect it to be a no-holds-barred COD multiplayer experience. And finally, number 1 is Destiny 2, which is a game that I expect to actually be what Destiny was when they first started talking about Destiny. Now, you have to keep in mind that Destiny has evolved into what I would consider to be a very good game. Through expansions and updates, it has managed to turn itself into more of what it sort of advertised itself as in the first place. And now that they're releasing a game with all of that experience under their belt that starts off at this point, I think we're probably in a good place. Destiny wasn't my favorite when it came out, but I've very rarely seen people who have revisited it later and said, wow, this didn't get any better. And again, it's Bungie, they have first-person shooting down. I think they just didn't have level design and multiplayer free roam down, because I don't think they've ever done that. Now they kind of have that experience, and I'm excited for it. Destiny 2 should be pretty badass, actually. Couple of bonus games for you. Mount & Blade 2 Bannerlord, which there's a lot of speculation regarding multiplayer modes. There may be a co-op campaign, a lot of talk about sandboxes, and we'll see what happens. Then there's Dawn of War 3, which is a really good multiplayer RTS. Definitely nailed what it was trying to be. And then of course Dead by Daylight. What's your favorite multiplayer game that is already out or will come out this year? Leave it for us in the comments, let's have a discussion. Do us a big favor and click like. If you're not subscribed, now would be a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every single day of the week, and the best way to see them first is of course a subscription. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon, you can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero, and we'll see you next time right here on GameRanks.